Andre Kachatourian on the phone with UFC.com's Matt Perino ahead of UFC 222. Matt, you are in Las Vegas right now, which is slowly turning into the sports hub of the country. We had WWE there last week, got UFC there this week. The Vegas Golden Knights continue to dominate the NHL. Vegas is a sports town now, Matt.
It is, and then this is the ultimate sports weekend. We have the Golden Knights tonight, Friday, and then we got the NASCAR is having three days in a row here, and then Rugby Sevens, the USA Rugby Sevens are here this weekend. It's crazy.
I didn't even talk about the rugby and the NASCAR, but that's interesting. You bring those up. But you will be at UFC 222 at T-Mobile Arena. You hosted the open workout, and let's talk about the main event for this card. Chris Cyborg versus Yana Kunitskaya. Saying that right, Yana Kunitskaya.
You did say it right. Very nice.
Russian making her UFC debut in the women's featherweight title fight. Chris Cyborg. The Oddchart.com had betting lines at -800 for Cyborg when this fight was first announced. But now some sportsbooks have her as a -2,000 favorite. So she's an overwhelming favorite in this one. Matt, do you think there's any shot that Yana Kunitskaya makes the greatest upset in UFC history on Saturday night?
There's always a shot, you know what I mean? I mean, you go into these fights and, you know, these are professional fighters. They train every day and, you know, they all have, you know, certain areas of their game. Their strengths and weaknesses, there's a chance, but it's a very small chance.
Yeah. I agree with you. You look at Kunitskaya, not a lot of UFC fans probably know a lot about her. She was in the Invicta FC promotion, and now obviously making a UFC debut. What do you know about this woman that others don't know about her, her fighting style, etc.?
Basically, you know, she's competed in a bunch of different disciplines. She's a Muay Thai champion, kickboxing, karate, taekwondo. She's done a lot of stand-up. She's the former Invicta champion, and she trained at Jackson Winklejohn with Holly Holm. She was actually a big part of Holly's camp preparing for Chris Cyborg.
Yeah.
Chris Cyborg. So she's had a lot of time to prepare for, you know, the fighter that I feel like a lot of women in, you know, the 135, 145 divisions kind of fear. She doesn't seem to have any fear. She was planning to fight Cyborg a few years back in Invicta. The fight fell through. So she's had her on her radar for a long time. She's had Holly in her camp, getting her ready, giving her looks from Holly's fight 3 months ago, and trying to, you know, emulate what she's going to see in there. But even with all of that said, I feel like there's preparing for Chris Cyborg, and then there's fighting her. And we're seeing the evolution of Cyborg, who at one time was this absolute terror, just, you know, bulldozing her way through opponents. And we've seen in her last few fights, she's really evolved into a technical marvel in the octagon. She's really against Holly, I feel like her striking was superb and her technique was on point. And I feel like Kunitskaya is a little bit outclassed here, but like we said, you know, man, if anybody's wants to put a little underdog bet on, I mean, this is the one to put it on.
It's interesting. Let's just rattle off some Cyborg stats right now, just to exemplify how challenging this is going to be for Kunitskaya. Cyborg, 94% takedown defense in her career, lands nearly 7 significant strikes per minute. In her 4 UFC fights, outstriking opponents 302 to 92, which is insane. And her last fight, obviously, as you talked about, it was against Holly Holm, and you know that was the distance, but Cyborg controlled that fight the whole way through, and I don't think she's gonna have any trouble with Kunitskaya either. In fact, Kunitskaya lost to Tanya Evinger in March of 2017, so less than a year ago. Evinger, she lost to Cyborg at UFC 214. So I don't know. It's gonna be. I think the question is this end in the first round?
Mm-hmm. I think that Kunitskaya is tough, and I think that her team has shown in the past an ability to game plan for fights. And I think that Cyborg has taken a different approach, but you know, in the last few fights, kind of like preparing her for the longer haul, trying to get into the deeper round, show her cardio. I think that was the most impressive thing from that Holly Holm fight was Cyborg's performance in that 5th round. I mean, she still was as good as she was in the first 5 minutes. So, but this time around, I feel like Cyborg has talked about getting back to her roots, maybe bringing the pressure and the aggression, the power early. And I just don't think, from a striking perspective, that Yana Kunitskaya is going to offer the kind of defense or the offense to give Cyborg problems. I could be wrong, but I watched her last fight in Invicta. Yeah, but I watched her last fight in Invicta, and she really she utilizes the clinch a lot. And to get inside and clinch with Cyborg means that you got to put yourself in the danger zone, and that's where a lot of fighters in the past have gotten touched up a bit. And I think that those power shots from Cyborg at 145. Yana's been fighting at 135 now for a few years. I think it's going to be a lot to deal with.
Do you think the betting lines are at minus 2,000? They're so outrageous right now. Do you think it's like that because of the fact that people are looking at this fight and seeing that, okay, this is kind of like was the UFC emergency title fight that they made after the Edgar Holloway fight fell through. So she might be facing this a nobody, and they just don't know who she is. That's why the line shifted so much over the last month. Do you think that could be the case?
Mm-hmm. I definitely think, factoring in the fact that she's a 135er, she has competed at 145 before, but now she's moving back up to 145 to face what many consider to be the greatest female fighter in history. Right. And so, you put that into play. You put the fact that this is on short notice. Her first UFC fight is a title fight against Cyborg. I mean, the pressure that comes along with this, Cyborg's shown that every UFC appearance, she's just gotten better and better. So I think that there's a lot of different factors going on here. Plus, you got to remember, the line opened at 900. It ballooning up to minus 2,000, that's because all the money is coming in on Cyborg, which rightfully so. But I don't think if this would have opened at a minus 2,000, I think that would have said more about the difference. I think Ronda was about a minus 800, minus 900 against Holly when that opened. So very similar in this one.
All right, we're going on to the co-main right now. The Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega, number 2 versus number 3 in the featherweight division. And I really like Brian Ortega, man. This guy is undefeated. Saw him fight at UFC 214 in Anaheim. A tremendous submission victory against Renato Moicano. And then coming out in UFC Fight Night Fresno with another unbelievable submission win against Cub Swanson. Going up against Frankie Edgar, who hasn't fought in a while now. Since UFC 211 was the last time he fought against Yair Rodriguez, who just absolutely destroyed him. But now, these two getting after to get in the octagon. Edgar's title fight against Holloway falling through because of Holloway's injury. So now, Edgar not choosing to wait. He wants to fight again. He really wants to fight in the octagon, so he took the fight against Ortega. What do you see happening in this one?
When this fight first was announced, I really, really liked Ortega as well. But then I did dial it back a little bit, and I kind of went into the memory bank and remembered what, not only what Frankie Edgar did to Yair Rodriguez in their fight, but what we were saying going into that fight. And I'm not going to be fooled into, dismissing Frankie Edgar again. I think we do that a little bit too often. You look at this guy's career, and all he's done is win. The only guy that beat him at 145 pounds is Jose Aldo, who's considered to be the greatest featherweight of all time. Sometimes styles make fights. No one else has had an answer for the answer. And you break down where this fight is going to start, and it's going to be on the feet. That's where Frankie Edgar has the most advantage. He's faster. He's more technical. He's a seasoned striker. He's a seasoned boxer. And, Ortega is a jiu-jitsu guy, and he's evolved as a striker, but I think it was Brendan Schaub this week that came out and said that one of the biggest areas that he is concerned about for Ortega is the striking, because it's not on the same level as Frankie Edgar. And Brendan Schaub is trained with Ortega. They're actually pretty close. And I think that if this fight goes to the ground, don't forget, Frankie Edgar is a BJJ black belt, trains with Ricardo Almeida out in New Jersey, one of the most talented and world-renowned jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world. So anywhere this fight goes, from a jiu-jitsu perspective, Frankie Edgar will be right at home. Don't discount him if this fight does go to the mat, but I think he has such an overwhelming advantage on the feet. Brian Ortega likes to get hit up a little bit in his fights. That could be a problem. I think the speed and the experience and the technique are going to be too much for the answer.
That's an interesting point you bring out there, Matt. You know, I was gonna say Ortega. I thought Ortega was gonna win this fight. I was gonna predict Ortega, but you know, you should probably get into politics, Matt, because you made some very convincing arguments there, and I'm convinced now. I agree with you. You made some really good points, and I love what you said. I'm on Edgar's side now. I look at Ortega as well. His you know, flashy victories. You can't ignore that. Like, his last 5 wins have been finishes, and great, exciting submissions that he does on his opponents. That just you remember the way Ortega wins his fight. It's in your memory. So I think people, you're right. They might be falling into recency bias. They saw Yair Rodriguez. He was a popular pick in that fight against Edgar, and then he loses. I think there might be some recency bias here with Ortega, as you talked about, and. Ortega has actually not outstruck an opponent since 2015. You're right. If this fight is on their feet, I've got to give the advantage to Edgar. And you made some excellent points that if it does go to the ground, Edgar is going to be right there with him. So, yeah, I'll go with Frankie Edgar in this one. And again, Edgar's only lost to Jose Aldo in his weight class. So, you know, sure, he lost twice, but he loses against one of the greatest featherweights of all time.
Definitely. And I think that, you know, Ortega, I'm not discounting him in the slightest.
Neither am I.
Kid. And he's been, you know, I've learned really a lot about his story. I knew, you know, the basic, you know, skeleton of it, but I've really, you know, dove deep on him as we move towards UFC 222. And he's had a really hard life, you know. I mean, he's brought himself out of, you know, poverty, and he still sleeps on the floor, you know, in the same house that he's been at for a while. He still trains in his coach's garage. He is a old school, respectful, hard-nosed fighter, true fighter, and I respect Brian Ortega a ton. I think he has superstar potential because of his, you know, his fighting style and his accomplishments and what he is capable of doing. But I feel like there's levels to this. We always talk about that, right? And I feel like this is a step up that if he is able to win here, man, the sky is the limit. That Max Holloway Brian Ortega fight is going to be massive. But if he loses, it's okay. Just like, you know, you think back to, I can't remember the last person we were really hyping up for a title fight or a number one contender fight and they lost, and the hype train is dead or this and that. It's never dead. This is MMA. This isn't boxing. You know, there's going to be losses every step of the way. It's how you bounce back from those losses. But then again, you might not want to listen to me because last time we did this conversation, I talked you into Derek Brunson, and we all saw what happened with Jacare.
Right. Yeah, I think. Sorry. Yeah, I think I totally get your point there. And you know, you look at Edgar's age too. He's 36 years old, and that's kind of the reason why I was picking Ortega at first. Ortega's a young dude, but you're right. This I think might be a big step for him. And Edgar hasn't fought in a long time. He's hungry for this. He really wants to get back in the octagon. Like, just the fact that he's risking a shot at the title for this. You know, that's a big deal. The fact that he already had a title shot, and he said, you know what, I don't have a title shot. I don't care. I still want to fight. I respect that. A lot of people say, oh, I'll fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. That's what Edgar's doing. He wants to fight, and I got to respect that. But yeah, Matt, excellent insight as always. You make some scintillating points. So I'm guessing your final prediction is Edgar on this one.
Mm-hmm. Final prediction, I'm going to go with Edgar and Cyborg. And you're definitely going to want to tune in for some free FS1 action, the featured bout on FS1 before the pay-per-view starts. The debuting strawweight sensation Mackenzie Dern, 5-0, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, very, very hyped debut. She's taking on Ashley Yoder. A lot of comparisons to Ronda Rousey. For those, maybe more casual fans that are looking for, a new fighter to kind of get interested in, I mean, I think a lot of people are expecting her star to rise very quickly, and she's going to be on free TV on Saturday night.
That's Mackenzie Dern, FS1, the women's strawweight fighting with Ashley Yoder. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. We will talk again soon. Enjoy the fight.
Thanks, Andre. Take care.